Ableton tips and tricks. Control J for consolidating. What do we use consolidating for? In Ableton, when I load loops into the sequencer part, then it stays in this loop format. And that means that if I want to change, for example, this chord in the last loop, then I kind of need to split this up and then go and do it. Which is also a way to do it, but then afterwards, when I go and edit it, then I now have like two different items that I kind of need to work with. So what I instead do is that I grab all of this and press Command J to consolidate. And now I have all of the different loops as one long sequence. So that means that now I can go and really like change the small details and make it so that I like it even more. Let's try. I got the idea that the first time it shouldn't go down. The bass can go down, but not the chords. So the next time we will do like this. So here again we need to make the bass do the same. So I also go to the bass track and consolidate it. And now I can go and edit this individual spot. And by having consolidated this loop, I'm also able to make room for new notes. Because if it's a loop, then when I drag it, then it just continues the loop. So for example, if I want to extend this last chord, then if I don't consolidate it, then it will simply just start on a new loop. And I really don't have the option to extend the last chord. But again, I can consolidate this and extend the last chord. And for example, if I want this note to be longer, then it's not possible now because the current MIDI item stops here. So if I want to be able to make a long note that stretches between these two, then I also need to consolidate these two. And now I can go and do it. So you can consolidate to glue different MIDI parts together, or you can use consolidate to break up the loop, and instead of having one loop, then just have one long sequence where you can go and edit all the small details and make it even more interesting and surprising for yourself. One shortcut that really changed my way of thinking about time. When you're making music, time is like half of everything. So being able to modify and control what it is that you want to express with the time is so crucial. This next tip just really blew my mind and changed how I work with time in Ableton. You press Alt and arrows left or right, or on a Mac you press Command left and right. That disables the grid and now you can move with very small intervals. So let's try to hear this drum beat while we are moving the second hi-hat in very small steps. And it's like, depending on how the second hi-hat hit is, it just completely changed the feels of how this drum beat sounds. And I don't think that there is something that's better than others, but it's all just different. And I just think that is so important to be aware of. Because it's not about just being in grid, but it's about making something that sounds interesting for yourself. And it's just like, you can do this to everything. And I can move these a bit forward. and suddenly the beat just comes alive and it gets an attitude, gets character. So by simply moving around with the keys while pressing Alt on a PC or Command on a Mac, then you can like experiment with how your time feeling is. If you have made like this killer groove, I'm not saying that I did it here, but let's pretend I did. What I like to do is to make a bass, and then I copy the drum beat to the bass, and I move all the hits down to one channel, and then I press legato, because now I have kind of the feel and I can use this for making a bass. So when we hear the drums while with the bass, then it simply just have the same groove, so it just fits perfectly together. Also, we can look at this piano arpeggio. Let's try to just move around. I press Alt because I'm on a PC. And just by delaying the first hit, it just brings some character, some tension. And now it's like, it feels like it's falling every time, which isn't bad. And then we can like have different feelings every time. And now I'm doing it a bit fast, but really just try to do it slowly and listen to each hit. Should it be delayed or should it be moved ahead? And you can hear it's like so little that we move it, but it just brings so much storytelling, I would call it. Because now it feels like there is somebody trying to say something with it. So if you really like get into each and every note and really move it until it feels right for you, until it feels like, oh, there is something here which is important, then you just give it so much more than if you just quantize it. Because quantizing basically just kills your intentions and motives with how you express yourself through time. Another really cool trick is to freeze your track and then to drag it onto an audio track. That will automatically turn it into an audio track, which means that now I can go and cut it up and, for example, reverse some of it. But now I just got some new tools to work with the sound. I could, for example, cut the middle here and do like this effect, which is impossible to do as long as it's MIDI. So I press R for reversing the audio. So freeze your MIDI track and then drag it down to an audio track. And then you will have the MIDI as audio instead, which can be extremely helpful. When you're automating and you need to edit a specific automation, then it can be kind of difficult to like go and find mixer and then here it is. What you can do instead is to click on what you want to automate and then it will automatically show it here in the editor. So if I want to edit the first cent, then I just press on the first cent, or if I want to edit the volume, then I can now go and edit the volume. It's so extremely simple and easy and just makes automating in Ableton much more fun. And by the way, when I'm automating volume, what I do, instead of automating the fader, then I make an utility and I automate the gain on the utility, because if I automate the fader, then I afterwards can go and change the volume of the fader. So by automating utility gain instead, then it just becomes so much more easy to do my final mixes, because I'm not worried about hitting the fader, and yeah, it just becomes easier. And it's the exact same effect. And now it's also even more easy to actually have different automation settings, because I could, for example, try to make another automation of the volume by simply just adding a new utility. I recently went on a journey to understand compressors and how they work, and I learned so much, especially one trick with the VCA compressor, which in Ableton is called the glue compressor. It was a preset which is attack 10, release 0.1 and ratio 4. Instead of I have to dial it in every time I open the glue compressor, then I can go and set it once, right click on the glue compressor and save as default preset. So every time I open up my glue compressor now, then I have like this extremely nice glue compressor preset. And it just makes it much more fun to use, because almost every time I use the glue compressor, I use this preset. You can also do this with external plugins. For example, every time I use True Iron, then I have the voicing for 111C fully strained, and then I at least have like 14 dB of crush. So instead of I have to go and dial that in every time I load True Iron, then I simply just go to True Iron and select Save as Default Configuration. Also with the Helm synthesizer, every time I load the Helm and it's automatically playing something, then my speaker is like almost getting blown. So what I do now is just to add a filter, which will filter out the high notes, which I really think sounds disgusting. And again, I just press Save as Default Configuration. I use Spitfire Audio's soft piano, which is free in their lab selection. It just sounds good. And one thing I like to do is to make like arpeggios. And what I normally do to make it sound bigger is that I press Ctrl A and then I just lengthen them all. And you can see it really does an amazing job by not overriding notes. But let's listen. You can see here in the beginning, it starts over again. And also, we can make it sound better. So instead of extending the notes, then we will use the hold pedal. So I will simply just draw it to be on. And now you can hear it sounds like this underworld sound. And all the notes are long, and it, for me, like the hold pedal on the piano is maybe my biggest weakness, because I've spent so many years trying to let go of it. And then I found it in Ableton and I'm like, I really love it. But of course, when you change the tonality, there are some weird artifacts with how this works. And sometimes you need to like draw it not to 100% from the beginning for it to work. But I guess you will find out, but just take my words. It takes some figuring out before it works completely as you want it to. But now when we are changing the tonality, then we want to let go of the sustain pedal. So what I do is just draw it down to 0, and then it will let go and all the notes will stop. And we should have the same thing here in the start. Just sounds so beautiful. And without, with, and it also becomes much more CPU heavy, but that's the price for making stuff sound beautiful, I guess. Check it out and see if it works with the instruments you're using.